Summer of 1985, we were in our senior year of high school and decided to celebrate the start of summer vacation with an unforgettable adventure. Jake, Paul, Sarah, David, Julie, and I had been inseparable since childhood. Julie, always the most studious and ambitious of the group, had just received the news that she was accepted into the prestigious Yale University. For us, residents of the small town of Norwich, Connecticut, this was a great source of pride. We wanted one last getaway together before our lives took different paths. We decided to camp in the forest near our town. The forest was known for its dense trees and winding trails. We were all excited, eager for an adventure. After setting up camp, we lit a fire and started telling stories. One of the stories was about the crawlers, creatures that crawled on the ground and hunted in packs, a local legend that made everyone laugh, believing it to be just an invention. As the night progressed, the sounds of owls and rustling leaves became more intense. Jake suggested we explore the forest a bit more, even with the darkness around. We hesitated a bit, but what the heck, it was our last adventure together. With flashlights in hand, we followed a narrow trail. The forest seemed alive, the branches of the trees swaying with the wind, creating frightening shadows that seemed to want to grab us. Suddenly, Julie stopped abruptly. She thought she saw something move among the trees, but when she shone her light on the spot, she found nothing. It must have been an animal, she said, trying to reassure herself. We kept walking, but the feeling of being watched started to bother everyone. Paul, the jokester of the group, began to mock the situation, imitating the sound of crawling creatures to scare us. No one laughed. After some time, we decided to head back to camp. On the way back, we heard a strange sound, like something scraping the ground. As we approached the camp, we noticed the fire was out, something that shouldn't have happened. Quickly, we rekindled the fire, trying to convince ourselves we were safe. However, the sounds around us intensified. We couldn't identify their source. They seemed to come from all directions. Jake was the first to suggest that something was really wrong and that maybe it was best to leave. Before we could decide, Julie screamed as she felt something grab her ankle. When we shone our lights on the ground, we saw a pale, skeletal hand with claw-like nails. Julie was forcefully dragged into the darkness. We tried to hold onto her, but she disappeared among the trees. In panic, we ran in different directions. David, the most athletic of the group, found a small natural shelter among the rocks. He waited there, trying to control his breathing and fear while the screams of his friends echoed through the forest. Paul, running aimlessly, found a stream. He thought of following the watercourse to find a way out, but heard light footsteps behind him. Looking back, he saw several shadows moving quickly. They were the crawlers, crawling with terrifying agility. He tried to speed up, but one of the crawlers caught up with him, knocking him to the ground. Paul fought, but he was quickly overpowered by the creatures, his screams echoing into the night. Sarah and I were the only ones left, and we met again by chance. We decided to try to reach the road, remembering it was a few kilometers away. With the horrific sounds getting closer, we ran desperately. Sarah stumbled, and as I tried to help her up, I saw the crawlers approaching. I pulled Sarah with all the strength I had, but I realized she was injured. We continued, but the speed of the crawlers was unmatched. I knew the only chance was to leave her and run alone, but the guilt consumed me. When I reached the road, I looked back and saw Sarah being dragged by the creatures. I fell to my knees, in despair, but quickly got up and walked along the deserted road, my heart pounding and my breath heavy. After what felt like hours, I saw the headlights of a car breaking through the darkness. It was the town sheriff's car. I threw myself in front of the vehicle, desperate for help. The sheriff got out of the car, and I, breathless, explained what had happened. His expression changed from concern to despair when I mentioned that his daughter, Sarah, was among those attacked. He immediately grabbed the radio and called for backup. While we waited for reinforcements, the sheriff asked me several questions, trying to understand what was happening. I told him everything I could remember, how each of my friends was taken. He seemed disbelieving, but the fear in his eyes was undeniable. Finally, the reinforcements arrived, and the search began. I was taken back to the forest, now illuminated by dozens of flashlights. The silence was oppressive. Each minute that passed without finding any sign of my friends increased the sheriff's anguish. When the search seemed futile, one of the officers found David. He was in a state of shock, his eyes glazed over, repeatedly muttering, "It was the crawlers, it was the crawlers." David was taken to the hospital, still murmuring the same phrase. The police continued the search, but nothing else was found. After a few days, David was released from the hospital. Traumatized, he woke up every night crying and screaming. His parents moved to another town, trying to help their son overcome everything he had experienced that night. I never went back to that forest. Today, nearly 4 decades later, the screams of my friends and David's words still echo in my mind every night.